welcome to Tabletop Gaming Guild. Today we'll be continuing my top 100 with number 51 through 60. And this particular set of 10 is pretty Euro heavy, though we're starting off with a straight up Amerithrash. My number 60 is Wildlands. Wildlands is a light and fun Martin Wallace title. So in Wildlands you are secretly selecting from a set of numbers where you want your characters to start, and the numbers you don't choose end up being where the opponent has to put their gems. And on your turn, you're going to reveal where one of your characters is, move, and either try to capture a gem or kill an opponent's character. Either one gets you points. And kill enough characters or capture enough gems, and you win the game. So it's kind of cool in that you can set traps, so you can put your opponent's gems in places that you know your characters are going to be, so when they go to try to capture that gem, you can, reveal I have a character there. And there are different ways you can actually interrupt players' turns using your cards. Unfortunately, that also means if you're using cards outside of your turn, you do not draw back up until it gets back to your turn. So people are going to judge that, you used so many cards, you're going to be vulnerable now. So I'm going to attack him because he's only got 2 cards in his hand. It's very unlikely he's going to be able to defend against my attack. It's nice to get out every once in a while if you're just looking for something that's you don't have to think about too much, but just that right amount where it can be fast and fun. My number 59 is probably the most gorgeous game I own, and the aesthetics go beyond just the surface and actually play a significant part of the mechanics of the game. And that's Tang Garden. Cover's absolutely beautiful, but the entire game is that way. In this game, you are building a garden. So you're getting different garden tiles, you're getting to place different decorations in that garden, and you're getting to put scenery down, and then you're going to use those points you generate from that, or moving up a track to be able to influence characters, and these characters are going to travel around the board and score you money based on the view that they get and how that fits with their aesthetic sense, and use that to determine how many coins you get. While it's a beautiful cover and a beautiful game, mechanically it fits so well, and everything revolves around that aesthetic and making it as pleasing to the individual as possible. It's a really beautiful game. It has a lot of three-dimensionality to it, and it really impresses me how they are able to so successfully incorporate that into the gameplay. You cannot forget to look at how beautiful this game is. It's so intrinsic to how it plays. My number 58 is the polar opposite of Tang Garden, because it's an abstract strategy game where the visual appeal of it seemed to be an afterthought. It's really, there isn't a lot to look at here. I mean, it looks nice enough, but you're getting tiles down where you need to get certain colors filled in a certain pattern to be able to score those tiles. And it does have a cool mechanic in that's basically the ratchet style, similar to like Patchwork, where when you take a tile, it costs a certain amount of time, and you cannot go again until you are the furthest behind in time. So if you take a big tile, expensive tile, you can get a lot of points in the future, possibly, but they may actually get several turns in a row before you get to go again. Mechanically, it's super sound. There's a lot of strategy in this game, a lot of thought into making sure you have the optimal pattern at the lowest time cost. And you can actually put one tile down that triggers all sorts of other tiles to score, because now you've finished the pattern for all these other tiles. And that means that at no point do you feel like, you're out of the game. You're always invested. You always have a chance. No matter how far you are behind, you can still potentially catch up if you can just make this group of sets work. Maybe there's not a whole lot of theme to it, but that's not always necessary. I mean, a good abstract can be tons of fun every once in a while, and it has just enough visual appeal to, actually get people to try it. is a title that actually just hit number 1 in BGG, or at least another version of this. Not the version I have, but it's still an excellent game, and that's Brass. The version that just hit number 1 is Brass Birmingham, which actually adds beer as a resource and cleans up the rules a little bit, modernized it a little bit. But the original game is what I've been playing and I really enjoyed. Though for either version, I think number 1 is a little too high for this game. It's still a phenomenal game. In Brass, you are getting resources and using them to build structures to generate more resources and send those resources off for trade. However, there's 2 ages in this game, and halfway through the game, all the old technology becomes outdated, goes away, and now you have to build with new technology. So one of the other things that makes this game interesting is the debt mechanic. You are highly encouraged. It's actually can be quite beneficial to take loans, and it's so important to jump ahead in technology and making sure you're getting the best things out there and putting out resources that not only you can use, that you can tempt other people to use, because buildings score more when they've been completely depleted. So all their resources are dedicated to some other facility, and they're fully utilizing all the resources they produce. It's a little bit older this time, and there are a little bit of clunkiness to the original version. So if you want to get Brass, I would definitely recommend getting Brass Birmingham. Though I still don't think it deserves to be number 1. I think where I put it is really appropriate. It's still an excellent game. If you watch my top 10, you already know what the best game of all time is. My number 56 can be confusing because of the titling system. So Fantasy Flight has made a number of games with very similar titles, and they also made remakes of those games. Lots of expansions. It's very easy to get confused which is which, and which one have you played, which one is you haven't played. When you're buying an expansion, you really need to make sure you're buying for the right game. So Arkham Horror, this is the 2nd edition. I think they're on their 4th edition of Arkham Horror. There's also Eldritch Horror, which is also an excellent game. Also the same theme. Also by the same publishers. In Arkham Horror, you have a map of the town, all the different iconic buildings, and you're going around trying to investigate while all these horrors are popping up, and you could get dragged into the other world. But I think this one's the best for appealing to both Ameritrash and Eurogamers. It definitely leans towards the Ameritrash end, but there's definitely a kind of a somewhat Euro feel to it, and you definitely can strategize a bit more and cooperate with your fellow players to hopefully beat the great old ones. And while I often have issues with how Fantasy Flight writes their rulebooks, this one I thought was really easy to learn. Yeah, it's a little bit involved, but not terribly heavy. It's a game that you can get to the table, teach somebody relatively easy. So it's an excellent game, lots of fun for all gaming styles.
My number 55 gets a bad rap for complicated iconography. Personally, I found them pretty straightforward and easy to learn, but I'm definitely in the minority on that for Race for the Galaxy. Race for the Galaxy has you picking roles similar to Puerto Rico, and those roles will determine what actions you get for that round. Everybody will simultaneously pick roles and reveal, and if you pick the role, that's what everybody gets to do. However, for being the one to pick a specific role, you get a bonus related to that role. If multiple people pick the same role, you still only get to do that action once. So for actions like settling a planet, when you play a planet down, you're using other cards in your hand to pay the cost. So where the race element comes in is one of the possible endgame triggers is having a certain number of cards in your tableau. So while this game allows you to gather tons of resources, get points, and that's one possible strategy, the obvious counter to that is for the other player to be playing as many cards as quickly as possible, getting points from the cards themselves. It is a really cool game. People do sometimes complain about the strength of the racing mechanic and pushing the end of the game, although I think that is a little bit overstated. It is certainly a good strategy. It is not a guaranteed win. Number 54 is a game that's actually pretty hard to get to the table, and that's Root. Now, this can be seen as a pretty complicated game because of the initial teach. Basically, this is an asymmetrical game where each player plays their own faction with their own rules and basically their own game that they're playing. And when you're first teaching this, not only do you have to learn your own faction, you have to be able to teach each player how their faction works. Well, that is super cool. That means that first game is going to be really rough, especially since optimizing your own faction can only be done if you fully understand what the other factions do. So this game becomes at its best after you've played every faction and understand all the elements of the game, which is quite a lot for initial buy-in, but once you get past that point, it is phenomenally satisfying. And each faction appeals to a different playstyle, so it's very quickly established which one's your favorite, which one you really enjoy, but it's still fun to switch it up and try the other ones. And there are a lot of expansions for this game now, so there's a lot of different factions and a lot of different ways you can play this game now. So really awesome, a lot of variety, but a little hard to get to the table for the first time.
Most of the two-player games are definitely relegated to the lower half of my top 100, because I simply don't get them played enough. However, Onitama definitely shot up there, and it's definitely really high on my list because it's such a phenomenal two-player game. Even if I don't get two-player games played much, every time I do play this, I play this at least a dozen times. Each player's going to have 5 figures and 2 cards, and there'll be an extra card that's going to rotate. So what makes that really interesting is those cards determine how your characters can move. And when you use one, you put it down to your left. And then you pick up the one on your right. So basically you're saying, I'm using this card. It's going down. Now, next turn, it's going to be available for my opponent. So you not only have to think of what you're doing, you have to think about how that card affects what your opponent can do. So it can be very important to make sure you're hoarding specific moves, especially if there's only one card that allows players to move diagonal one to the right. It does give it a fair amount of variability because there's a decent stack of different movement cards that are rotated in. You're only going to see 5 per game, and chances of the exact same 5 coming up ever again are pretty low unless you intentionally do that. Such an amazingly simple game. I literally taught you the entire rule set just now, and it's definitely my go-to whenever I have a short time to play a 2-player game. Or really, anytime I have an opportunity to play a 2-player game.
My number 52 is a worker placement Euro game set in space, and it's one of the first Kickstarters ever in board gaming. That is Alien Frontier. Now, this was a Kickstarter done right. They gave you a lot of content, but it was all really well put together. So in this game, you're rolling dice that represent your fleets, and the pips on those dice, or the combination of pips on the dice, determine the possible places you can go with them. But one of the things that makes this game so cool is the plug-and-play nature of it. There are 4 different expansions in this box, and they're very easy to add in or take out, and the new rules are so simple to teach. It gives a lot of variety to this game. You can constantly change things up by adding in one expansion, putting different combinations of expansions, and even though the base game is really solid, it is so much more interesting to be able to customize the game how you want. This is absolutely an excellent game. I hope more Kickstarters go in to do more games like this and put a lot more thought into all the additional content. So, my number 51 is a game that I feel doesn't get enough attention. And I feel a lot of that is due to the publisher being better known for wargaming and heavy games. That's Space Corp 2025 to 2300 AD. Clearly the title didn't help a lot either, but GMT is really well known for their war games. They do have also published some excellent Euro games. This is also on the moderate to heavy end, but what makes this cool is you can determine how long you want to play this game by determining how many essentially ages you want to play it. There are multiple boards in this game, and they are intended to play sequentially, but you don't have to. You can just play one of the boards, or aka one of the ages, and have a relatively short game that way. And also keep it simpler by just having maybe the first board, first age, the simplest rule set. But if you're all in and want to do the full scenario, it is really cool. It's like a mini campaign. In this game, you're going to be exploring the universe. So you'll start with the inner solar system, and you're going to be going out trying to find some resources, trying to expand on your technologies to be able to go out further. And the first person to get to the edge of the solar system triggers the end of that age. Then you can flip the board and go directly into the next stage when you're going to the outer solar system. It's so cool how this game keeps expanding. This game combines a minor deck building element with a tech tree element and exploration. And all those are elements that I absolutely love. All done very well. Yes, it's on the heavy end. Yes, it can be a long game. But you can always cater it, as I said, to how long you want to play. Phenomenal game. Needs a lot more attention. And a better name.
Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to check us out on other social media such as Instagram and Facebook. And don't forget to like and subscribe.